Hey, do you remember back in the early 80s when Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney had a feud? Well, whether if you do or you don't, I got you covered. In the early 80s, a press release announced a collaboration between Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney. The result? 2 songs. The Girl Is Mine in 1982, released on Michael Jackson's album Thriller, and Say 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 in 1983, released on Paul McCartney's album Pipes of Peace. During this time, Jackson and McCartney became good friends. Paul McCartney, in an interview, recalls talking to Michael Jackson, and he said,
"And during lunch or something, he just took me aside. He said, I want some advice." So I felt kind of big brotherly. You know, I'm quite a bit older than him. So I said, for a business, you ought to think about music publishing.
And Jackson's response, according to Paul McCartney?
And then a couple of weeks later, we were chatting, and he just came up to me and said, "I'm going to buy your songs, you know?" And I went, "Yeah, great, you know, good one." And we just carried on.
In 1985, Michael Jackson did just that. He bought ATV Music for $47 million. Now, ATV owned the Beatles catalog since 1969, after buying the rights from a publishing company called Northern Songs that Paul McCartney and John Lennon started in 1964.
We didn't think songs could be owned, me and John. We just thought they were in the sky. People just listened to them, you know. Well, pretty soon you had to get to know they could be owned because someone else knew they weren't in the sky, and he owned them. So that's what happened to us on the Northern Songs thing, which was me and John. Very early on, we got managed very well into a little situation, so it meant that the lion's share of whatever songs we did were taken by someone else.
Paul McCartney stated in an interview on the Howard Stern show that he didn't mind Michael Jackson buying the catalog.
You know what is weird? I don't mind that because he, had all the cash, someone was selling it, and he bought it. What I don't like is that I've actually written to him a couple of times, wrote a couple of letters saying, "Michael, don't you think after even if I was just a writer on the payroll, after 30 years of being reasonably successful for this company you now own, don't you think I could have a raise?"
McCartney stated, "He won't even answer my letters, so we haven't talked and we don't have that great of a relationship." McCartney continues, "The trouble is I wrote those songs for nothing."
And buying them back at these phenomenal sums, it's just...
It rubs you the wrong way.
I can't do it,
should.
So up to this point, Paul McCartney's biggest issues were not that Michael Jackson bought the Beatles catalog, but rather how Michael Jackson was running ATV. Now, Paul McCartney did not like the fact that Michael Jackson was using the Beatles songs in advertisement. Paul McCartney felt like that was a bit of a slap in the face. And also, at this point, it should be noted that Paul McCartney was making 30% royalties from the Beatles songs, whether they were played on any advertisements or on the radio. It's stated that privately, Jackson had said that he should have paid for his own songs when he had a chance. After all, McCartney was the richest musician at the time, with a net worth of $560 million and a rough income of $41 million a year from royalties. Jackson stated if he didn't want to invest $47.5 million in his own songs, then he shouldn't come crying to me now. Now, in 1993, there was a bit of a dynamic change, and we're going to be going over some topics that some Michael Jackson fans may not want to hear. If you get triggered easily by some of the stories that happened to Michael Jackson in the 90s, please skip to the timestamp on the screen. For everybody else, let's continue.
Police were so concerned about the media circus surrounding the 2005 Michael Jackson's child molestation.
The search for Michael Jackson goes on in Europe. His world is coming apart back home in Los Angeles. Mike Watkins has the latest from London. Mike?
Maureen, still no Michael Jackson sightings here in London today.
Attorneys are still fighting.
But he is not hiding out. He's not fleeing from anything.
The boy who has charged that Michael Jackson sexually molested him is saying that he has seen markings on Michael's body.
But still no Michael sightings. And meanwhile, back in the States, showbiz columnists are spreading the word that Michael might not be in Europe at all.
Now, in 1993, Michael Jackson was accused of child sexual abuse and was losing money with being tied up and all wrapped up in a lot of these legal battles. And on top of that, he had some pretty hefty loans that he had to pay back. And because of all this, Michael Jackson was losing money. And so by 1995, he had to do something pretty drastic, and he sold 50% of ATV to Sony for $100 million. Which at that point, it became Sony ATV Productions. And with that sale, Michael Jackson still owned 50% of ATV.
Far more serious condition that this could indeed.
I'm just going to interrupt you there because the TMZ website are reporting that Michael Jackson has passed away. We have no independent confirmation of that, but the TMZ website, who broke this story earlier this evening.
Well, here's what we can tell you. This is what's being reported by KTLA. Apparently, Michael Jackson suffered cardiac arrest this afternoon. He was rushed to UCLA Medical Center.
Now, in 2009, after Michael Jackson's sudden death, Sony gained full control over ATV and the Beatles catalog, paying out $750 million to Michael Jackson's estate. Now, I do want to say that when Michael Jackson passed away, Paul McCartney had a lot of really good things to say about Michael Jackson. For one, he spoke very highly of him. In an article, he said he was a lovely man, massively talented, and we will miss him. Also, he did state that he was not that upset that Michael Jackson bought the catalog, and that, he said that somebody had to do it. So he said that the biggest fight between the two was the fact that Michael Jackson, I guess, was not going to entertain a raise of any type. So other than that, I don't think there was that big of a bad blood between the two, as much as the media would like to say there was. Now we're going to end on a pretty good note, pun intended, but in 2015, Paul McCartney started a bid to regain the rights to the Beatle catalog. And the reason why he was able to do that is because of a copyright law. And that copyright law says that after 56 years of a piece of music, a piece of art, a movie, those rights are to be returned to the originator. So from my understanding, most of the Beatle catalog is back in the hands of the Beatles. On top of that, as the years go on, the next song reaches 56 years and so on, those rights will also be returned. So anybody that is still alive from the Beatles will equally gain those royalties. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this, please please subscribe, and please share this video out. If you really enjoyed it, please do all those things for me. I really appreciate it. And if you liked this video, you're also gonna like this video right over here. I'll catch you guys over in that one. Bye-bye.